Hello and welcome. Today we are going to start the discussion on the animal kingdom. We have already studied in depth the plant kingdom, where the main experience of the person is a sensitivity, a sensation, and a reaction, an adaptability. He sees his main problem as a circumstance to which he has to be sensitive and he has to react. And we've seen that plant families have specific sensation and its opposite. For example, tightness and looseness, or cannot move and movement, or shock and numbness, etc. We have also studied the mineral kingdom in some detail, and we saw that the main core issue of people who need mineral remedies is the experience that they are not developed enough, that their structure is not formed enough, or on the other hand, as if they are losing part of their structure or their capability. Now we will study a bit about animal kingdom. The main theme of the animals is survival. The need for survival of the species comes across strongly in the animal kingdom. And to survive, it's a one versus the other situation. So you have myself versus something else, the stronger versus the weaker, the victim versus the aggressor, the predator versus the prey, and attack and defense. So what happens is that when you talk to the person who needs animal kingdom, he may express some sensation, he may express some experience, but when you go down to it, you see that essentially it's a problem of one versus the other. Essentially it's a problem of the survival of the self. The second thing which is seen in animal kingdom cases is a process, which means that in a plant kingdom you see it's almost just like two diametrically opposite poles, one sensation and one reaction. In the minerals it is also somewhat unidimensional in terms of structure. But when it comes to an animal, you see that it's a process, that one thing leads to another thing, and you see that there is a whole life cycle or a process there, and in this process comes birth, it comes survival, it comes death, it comes attack, it comes defense, it comes sexuality, it comes everything. So there is a beginning, a middle and an end, a whole cycle that happens, and not a specific sensation or a specific capability. All these are intertwined in a story of the life process. Typical of that process, I will probably, you have heard the case, but I will describe it again. A woman comes and she says, I have a headache. I say, describe this headache. She says, the headache is, it's something as if there is pressure over here, as if there is pressure, as if it's all pressing something inside. And so you say, describe this pressure. So the pressure is shown there with a hand gesture, with the experience, but it doesn't stop there. You say, okay, describe the pressure. She says, it's very, very tight, and then it's rocking. And then she shows this movement. So the pressure, then there's a process pressure goes to rocking. So describe the rocking. Yes, it rocks back and forth, it rocks back and forth, and then it gets tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter, and then I feel as if I have no limbs. Now this is strange, because there is one thing that is tight, another thing that is rocking, and the third thing is that her limbs disappear. And then describe this a little bit more, and then she says then it just bursts open. Describe this bursts open. Well, it's tighter and tighter and tighter, it rocks, I have no limbs, then it bursts open, and then it's as if I'm floating or flying. So interestingly, none of these experiences are wrong. They are all true, all in their right place, and yet none of them is singular, none of them is the only one. So there's one followed by the other, followed by the other, followed by the other. First there's the tightness, then the rocking, then the disappearance of the limbs, then the bursting open, and then the floating and flying. So this becomes a process. This patient needed butterfly as a remedy, and what she was exactly describing are the various stages of the development of the butterfly in the cocoon, in the larva, in the pupa, and then the adult butterfly. And what she was describing as loss of limbs is exactly described in the term metamorphosis, where actually the entire creature undergoes a meltdown process. All the limbs actually disappear, and a new, completely different form emerges. So this is one idea of the animal kingdom. One is survival, then the victim aggressor, one versus the other, and then the process that involves a variety of sensations, movements, experiences, but all intertwined in a life story. So there are multiple sensations. One could be prominent, and the other could be many smaller ones along with it. The prominent one often will represent the most characteristic movement of the animal itself, and the smaller ones will represent different aspects like attack, defense, sexuality, and so forth. For example, in black mamba, Dendroaspis polylepis, in that case, the prominent sensation is speed, rush, fast, quick. And that represents the snake's ability to move at great speed and to attack with great rapidity. So let us try to understand the issues of the animal kingdom. One is predation, victim and aggressor. Predation is a biological interaction where a hunting animal seeks out and feeds on its prey. Often, predation will result in the death of the prey. This is often represented in patient language by saying, "This headache is killing me, someone is choking me, I feel I want to kill him, I want to choke him, I want to finish him off, I want to destroy him," and so forth. For example, the idea of victim and aggressor will come out in such expressions as, "The illness is taking me over, my throat pain is killing me versus you, me versus somebody else, somebody is doing it to me, he is stronger, I am weaker," etc. So the energy patterns often show as if one thing is doing something to the other thing. Often the animal kingdom patients will perceive their problems in terms of comparisons. For example, they will say, "If I can get the better of the other person, then I am okay. If I am more attractive than the other person, then I am okay." So there is a strong sense of competition and one-upmanship. Jealousy is the common expression of this. So the main theme in many animal remedy cases is that I will be okay if I get the better of someone else, if I can finish him off, if I can do it to him. So he is the problem, he needs to be eliminated. That's the thing. In plant remedy cases, the feeling is not this. The feeling is that the circumstance is the problem. As a simple example, if a boss is shouting at an employee, a plant employee will experience it as rudeness. He is being rude to me. I am experiencing a situation of rudeness and I am sensitive to rudeness. Whereas an animal remedy person will experience the boss as the problem. It's not his rudeness, but he has to go. He has to be finished. I have to get him. That's the whole difference between the two kingdoms. So there is also the idea of I versus myself. So many times this one versus the other translates as I versus myself, as a split within the self. So very often patient uses a language, I hate myself, I don't like myself, I don't like what I do, etc. I am no good. The idea of doing it to another person brings the strong theme of being malicious or revengeful, to do somebody else harm, to have aggressive and violent behavior. Images of violence and revenge and harm can give them pleasure. Sometimes it happens in their delusion or fantasy. If I just line up all these people and just shoot all these guys dead. For example, a person can say about corrupt ministers, I wish I could just line up all these corrupt people and just shoot them one after the other. And that derives a sense of pleasure just thinking about it. Some of the human expressions of all these aspects of animals is represented in such words as to take advantage of, to be exploited, to be victimized, to be oppressed, to be dominated, to be subjugated, to be conquered, to be manipulated, to be controlled, to be picked upon, to be left out, ignored, excluded, punished, being used by somebody else, to be pounced upon, etc. Among some other expressions of animals lies the fight for supremacy, territoriality, hierarchy or mating rights, sexuality. So you have the idea of conflicts over territory, over food, over a mate. So you have superior and inferior, somebody above and somebody below, somebody dominant and somebody weak. You have the top dog and you have the bottom dog. Another theme, of course, is attractiveness, which goes hand in hand with sexuality. So one of the main complaints of animal remedy patients will be the loss of attractiveness. Doctor, I am having hair fall, I am having acne, I don't look good. It's okay, my cancer is no problem, but please do take care of my acne. Well, that makes me less attractive. So some of the words that can be used to show this attractiveness is attention seeking, drawing, charming, enticing, attractive, etc. Very often animal kingdom patients are interesting because they are animated, they are lively, they are drawing attention. We should be aware at the same time that plant and mineral remedy patients can also share these qualities. Liliaceae family, for example, exhibit themes of attractiveness like Veratrum album, Crocus sativa, Paris quadrifolia. Certain cases of solanaceae like Stramonium can make the whole picture very vivid. They can say very interesting stories. Ranunculaceae family can have its sensitivity. Hyoscyamus has strong sexuality. Phosphorus can be very animated and communicative. Fluoric acid can be very flirtatious and make lively presentations. So it's not only that you can classify animal remedy people as attractive, sexual or attention seeking. However, when you go into the depth of the sensation, you will see that the sexuality of fluoric acid, for example, or Hyoscyamus, for example, is an expression of something else. It's not an expression of competitiveness, it's not an expression of survival, but it's an expression of something else. For example, in Hyoscyamus, at the deepest level, the sexuality comes from fear, from terror of losing the partner. The desire to hold on or to cling on to the partner from sheer fear or terror is what really prompts the sexuality of Hyoscyamus. Similarly, in Liliaceae, the main theme of attractiveness is the idea to belong and not to get excluded. So their sensitivity is not to compete but to be included, to be part of the group and not to be pushed out or excluded, and this is almost the only sensation they have. Of course, an animal can also want to be included and part of a group, but that's not its only sensation. It will have many others: inferiority, superiority, victimization, etc., etc. In Phosphorus, the theme of attractiveness and friendliness and animation arises from his need to develop his own identity as apart from his own family. So he starts being somewhat indifferent to his closed ones, to his family, and become quite animated with strangers and friends. This is the underlying basis of his attraction and communicativeness. It's the need to develop his own identity. So the idea is that if we stay only at the level of attention seeking or attractiveness or friendliness or liveliness, we are going to be totally confused or misled about which kingdom the person belongs. We need to go below and see where this actually arises from, and that's where the true difference between the kingdoms can be perceived. Some of the things that I need to tell you about animal kingdom is that the patient represents both the aspects of the animal, the victim and the aggressor side. Sometimes he will talk from the victim mode, and the same person sometimes can take the aggressor mode, and both of these will represent the same remedy. The victim and aggressor are two sides of the same coin. The victim has the seed of the aggressor and vice versa. So a person who needs a snake remedy, particularly some constrictor snake, can experience the symptoms of being tightly squeezed or constricted, but what he really needs is the constrictor snake as a remedy. Social life in animals is probably a complex and effective survival strategy. So very often you find in animal kingdom people a relationship to the group that they belong, because there is safety in numbers, there is safety from predators, and therefore there is a kind of conflict also between staying individual and being a part of a group. So here also a conflict arises. One of the themes of animals, of course, that differentiates it from plants and minerals is mobility or locomotion. And in animal kingdom cases, we often will see exactly the type of locomotion that is demonstrated by that particular animal. I don't know if I described to you the case that was treated by my colleague Dr. Ashok Borkar from Goa, and how at a certain point in a certain dream the patient described that there was a terrorist attack and she moved up the stairs to the first floor, and then when he asked the patient to describe this movement, then this running up the stairs, what she said initially, she said then it was actually not running but a slow movement, and then she said it was a crawl, and then she said it was on her belly as if she had no legs, and then she described the exact movement like she was humping her back and then moving forward and then moving forward and then moving forward. This was exactly the description of the movement of a boa constrictor, which is called a rectilinear movement, and it's a movement that arches its back and pushes itself forward, and she almost exactly described this movement. So very often patients who need the animal remedies describe exactly with gestures and energy the movement of that animal. There is one more misconception that I must talk about, and that is that patients, if taken to their depth, will tell us the name of the source, especially if it is an animal remedy. For example, they will tell us which bird or which snake, or that they need a particular insect or fish or whatever. I must say that in general this is untrue. A very small percentage of the patients, even those who need animal remedies, actually mention the name of the source. I don't know if the percentage is even 10%. 90% of the patients will not mention the source. They will give you the qualities of the source. They will tell you the qualities of the class of animals that they need. They'll tell you the qualities of the reptile. They will tell you maybe even the color of the particular reptile, but they may not mention the source. This is very important to know. And secondly, as a corollary to this, I must also say that 90% of the time, if the patient does mention something that could be the source, for example, he mentions dog or cat or tiger, butterfly or spider or crocodile or whatever, 90% of the time the animal the patient mentions isn't the remedy. Often it may not even be from the animal kingdom. So these are two very strong misconceptions we must get rid of from our head. Number one, that the patient who needs an animal remedy will always lead us to the source. This is wrong. And secondly, that if the patient mentions a source, it might be his remedy or it must be his remedy. This is even a greater mistake. What the patient will mention is an entire constellation of words that represent a particular kingdom, sub-kingdom, and the particular class of animals that his remedy comes from. So, having given that introduction to the animal kingdom, let us study one class of animals today, and that is the mollusk. Now, what is the importance of studying a class of animals? The importance of studying a class of animals cannot be overemphasized. This is very, very important, because when we recognize the characteristics of the class and we see how these characteristics are exactly representative of the specific survival strategy of that class, and we put the provings and this survival strategy together and understand, perceive the exact identity of that class, it makes life very, very simple. It's like understanding the first row or the second row or the third row of the periodic table. It's like understanding the specific sensation and reaction of a specific plant family. Like this, if we understand exactly what each class is, then it will make life very simple. It will narrow down our search to that particular class, and then it will be far easier to find a good remedy. So let us try to understand mollusk in this way. The word mollusk is derived from the Latin word mollis, which means soft. So a mollusk is a soft-bodied invertebrate whose skeleton, when present, is represented by a shell. This shell is usually external. There are about 112,000 living species of mollusks. Even more are being found. They mostly live on ocean floors, near the shores, particularly rocky ones. They live in intertidal areas, means between high and low tides, in the mud flats. And there are also some found on land, like snails. So the word soft is very, very important, and this is often one of the main experiences of the mollusk patient, who experiences himself or herself as being soft and therefore needing something hard to protect. If you want more details about the mollusk, about its anatomy, about its presence in nature, I would refer you to the book Mollusk, which I have written in association with my colleague Dr. Sudhir Baldota, and I would refer you to this book for the details, and you must read it to get a very good comprehension of a mollusk, and that will help you a lot. The softness of the body of the mollusk necessitates the development of a hard protective structure, which is actually an exterior skeleton. This shell is made of calcium carbonate and proteins such as conchiolin and perlucin. The shell has three layers: the outermost hard layer, the intermediate layers of calcium carbonate, and the inner layer, which is the shiny mother of pearl. Mollusks themselves are divided into three classes, well-known classes. There are others also, but among the most well-known are bivalves, the gastropods, and the cephalopods. A bivalve essentially has a double valve shell like a hinged box, and they fasten themselves with the bottom shell, so they open and can close like that. The gastropods include snails, slugs, purplefish, limpets, nudibranchs, periwinkles, etc. And these are a single-valved, univalved shell with spirals outwards and to one side as the animal grows. They also have a large flat foot designed for digging and locomotion. The cephalopods include nautilus, octopus, squid, and sepia. The shells vary in this class. They may be external, as in nautilus, internal, as in cuttlefish, or even absent, as in octopus.